Justin Poulin. He hosts the Celtics Stuff Live podcast, one of the longest running Celtics podcasters, a mentor to me, a friend to me. It's a blast to have you back on, man.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here. And, the fact that you would even consider me a mentor is pretty flattering. I mean, I do remember that time we recorded. I actually remember exactly where I was sitting in my house, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a good conversation. And I think you were like, hey, what can I do? What can I do? And that's the thing about you, Bobby. You're a learner,
Yeah.
you're an adapter, you're a worker. And that's how you get things in life.
Well,
That's how you make best of bad situations. That's how you survive. So
yeah,
good for you.
it's so fitting now too, because I remember one of the things I told you back then was I wanted to learn more than just sports broadcasting and sports journalism and all that different stuff. And the way the industry's gone, you do have to have more at your disposal. You have to know history. You have to know politics, right? Like all this different stuff has converged on sports media, especially with what we've seen in the bubble. So, I got to study a little bit of African American history in college and, get to know people from that background and talk about the issues and different stuff like that. And I don't consider myself an expert by any means, but to have the bubble be so oriented on those issues, I felt a little more prepared than I think some people who came into the industry in decades past to talk about those things.
Well, yeah, and I feel like the bubble definitely brought out um, it brought out topics of conversation that were happening along the side. Like if you want to talk about somebody who, now writes for the undefeated, but even when I covered the team when they won in 2008, Mark Spears was a man that was highlighting a lot of these conversations, but he wrote for the Boston Globe, and I don't think that intersection, as you're describing it, is of politics and culture and
Yeah.
maybe a little bit. I'd say black culture was definitely strongly influencing. You had a strong influence in the NBA, just from music and from clothing and artistic influence of all kinds. I think had got, but politics, no,
Yeah.
not at all. And I felt like I had a lot of conversations with especially Mark Spears during that time where he had been talking about these things, if not in his writing, definitely with the people who are around him. And I feel like, that was, I think it was always been there. It just didn't come to the forefront. And definitely didn't ever heard anybody on national media, having those kinds of conversations as
Yeah.
part of the broadcast.
I mean, it was disqualifying for Colin Kaepernick to do that 4 years ago, and now it's the norm. Everybody has to do it to some degree, has to address it if they're, part of the environment out there, which I think is admirable because it's hard to separate what's going on out in the world right now from, what's happening on the court because these are predominantly Black people in this league who have felt in some cases themselves the Sterling Browns of the world. Jimmy Butler talked about it too after the series. He wanted to have no name on his jersey because if he wasn't wearing the jersey, it could happen to him as well. So that's something since we last talked that's resonated most with me is that shift in the sports media landscape as well. And I think it was interesting to see reporters adjust to that too, because in certain press conferences, the players just wanted to talk about the issues of the world. They didn't want to talk about basketball, especially in the aftermath of the George Floyd situation and the protests that we saw, the strikes that we saw in the middle of the NBA bubble there. It was powerful stuff. It really was.
But the thing is too, Bobby, is like even within the bubble, I don't think everybody all agreed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's like one of the things here is like, there's some people that will speak their mind on these issues, but they'll speak, not from a place of experience, and so in some cases, it's just about, you don't have to have something to say about it, is my point,
Yeah.
as much as you kind of just have to be able to just see what's going on in the world and just take it for what people have to say, even if they're not experienced to talk about it. They're being
Yeah.
influenced by it. You look at like kind of the way that Jaylen Brown looked at the situation versus the way that LeBron James looked at the situation. Even within the bubble, there was not a uh, I don't want to say not a solidarity, but you see the same variation of opinions and attitudes, even in a very unified effort towards awareness.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the things that's really important about that is recognizing everybody's humanity for what it is, right? And some people live this every single day. Some people don't have any idea. Some people grew up with it, but then found themselves having a fortunate enough of a life that they don't have to face it every single day, but they remember what it was like when they grew up. Like, we're just a mishmash of all kinds of people with all kinds of different backgrounds. I think the thing that I respected about Jalen and the bubble on this, and it's really probably the most poignant thing that I read, honestly, like straight up. And I'm not trying to be a homer because I'm the one who cheered Jalen Brown's selection, and I just want to get on the Jalen Brown train. That's literally not it. It's very specifically where he said, look, if you want to cancel the season and go home, I'm cool with that.
What are you going to do?
But what are you going to do if you're saying that the reason you're going home is because, this is troubling, and the way that our world is troubling, and you want to influence change, then you better damn go home and get involved, because otherwise we might as well play some basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I definitely, and I think Jalen's probably preference would have been to cancel the season and go home and do those things. But I think he also knew that you weren't necessarily going to get that level of commitment from everybody who was in the bubble, that they were going to go home and do those things. And, I don't want to speak for Jalen. There's probably multiple layers to why he said that and what he meant by it and what he was willing to do himself. But we know he drove from Boston down to Atlanta. So we know what he was willing to do in terms of activism. And I'm not sure that everybody would want to do that level of activism.
Mm-hmm.
And for a variety of reasons. One thing that I think made it probably harder for anybody, and I can totally understand why you would want to go home, even if you didn't plan on being politically active, and say, I'm going home because of this. One thing that I think, I could understand completely is the separation from family.
Yep.
I mean, at a time when no matter what side you stand on with this, we could not feel more divided as a country, you know, um, feeling separated from your culture, your community, and feeling uneasy, then being separated from your family. I mean, that's something that you really have to respect and understand that sacrifice regardless of who went to the bubble and who didn't.
Yeah, and it was spoke so casually throughout, like, oh, they're at Disney, they got their catered food, they got their millions of
Dude,
dollars,
there's
everything like
only a
that.
few people that go to Disney without their families. So,
Yeah.
the fact that they were throwing Disney on it, like
Well, I
Disney
found
without your family is the most depressing thing I can think of, because I don't even really want to go to Disney, Bobby.
I,
I'm definitely not going without my family.
yeah. Justin on the teacups by himself spinning around. They couldn't even go to the park. I mean, all they
No,
could do was swim in the pool and get their tan, like
dude,
Ennis Cantor.
brutal. I
Um,
loved all the little poolside fights, though. That was fun.
yeah. The day after the locker room debacle.
Right? No, we're
It
still
was a
having
make
fun.
good. It was a make good. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all friends still. Everything we said all year was true. Uh, I want to stick on the bubble for one more second before we get to the Celtics, because that's what you mentioned is why the Doc Rivers firing rubbed me the wrong way a little bit yesterday, because the Clippers. Absolutely. Massive disappointment. I picked them to win the NBA Finals coming into this year. I thought they were going to storm through the league. And you saw the reverberations of a team that acted like they were champions already by default through Kawhi, rested throughout much of the year, wasn't healthy, didn't set their rotations. There was just a casualness to that team rather than an urgency that you would expect from a team that was going to be a champion. I mean, that's how you blow a 3-1 lead. But we also see underlying things there. Paul George's mental health, his physical health, clearly throughout the year was not very strong. Montrezl Harrell being out a month. with his mother's death. You know, the Lou Williams situation was its whole other thing, but a lot of stress factors, you know, pulling at this team. And of course, you expect the coach to be able to hold things together a little bit at that time. But I don't think anyone would question Doc Rivers' inspirational leadership in those moments and ability to bring people together. So sure, he didn't meet the basketball expectations of that moment. But I think in this situation specifically, the casualness with which franchises just let their guys go, whether it was Nate McMillan, Brett Brown, other things that work there, but so many coaches were fired out of this situation that I think was so abnormal. Like, you know, the Miami Heat are about to get all the praise in the world for their run, but do they do this in an environment where there's no home court? I think it's tough to imagine them doing it.
Yeah, it's tough to say. It's odd times, so you would expect odd behavior. And what you're actually saying is it's odd times, so why are we getting normal behavior?
Yeah.
Right? If you really take what you said. Now, um, the Doc Rivers one, I don't know that I find as curious, and here's why. You know, he's been there a while.
Mm-hmm.
They've had criticism levied at him for not maximize. Like, we got you the players, right? We traded away the draft picks. We spent the money, and I don't mean this go around. I mean previous iterations of the Clippers teams. You know, you didn't do it, and he was in tight, and they'd blow it up and start over, and they were building towards this, and they won the gigantic lottery last year by getting Kawhi to come to LA, and they, you know, they built this team. They blew a 3-1 lead. I think if they blew a 3-1 lead against the Lakers, he's still the coach. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, it's the situation, and if we did take this out of the bubble, Doc Rivers gets fired.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up, he gets, you know, and maybe the Clippers don't lose, is what you're saying, right? Maybe with not being in the bubble, maybe the Clippers, you know, meet those
I
expectations.
also think maybe
Who
you get something
knows?
different from Paul George. Paul George's struggles were baffling. He looked like
Yeah.
a bad player throughout much of the playoffs. And I know his shoulder's been screwed up all year, and that's another question for them going forward is his health and his viability as a star. But he said it himself. Mentally, he was checked out. There were other players in this bubble who just didn't want to be a part of it. Avery Bradley, Wilson Chandler, others who knew going in that this wasn't going to be an environment that they were going to thrive in. Others like George went, gave it a shot, and clearly just weren't able to make it happen. And I know people are going to kill them for that. Like, it seems like the easiest thing in the world to be able to go in there, even with everything happening in the world, and thrive on the court. Plenty of other players are doing it, but that doesn't mean specifically everyone's going to do it. And to hold Doc accountable for that, I think, is a little tricky. We'll see who they get. The replacement's going to be the big question. If they get a
Not a lot of
great,
great coaches.
yeah.
Not a lot of great coaches. I mean, Doc's never wanted to be part of a rebuilding. You know, we used to always say, why won't you play the young guys? Why won't you play the young guys? Although I've heard a lot of people say that about Brad, and I don't know how they can say that about Brad. It's like all he's got is
Do you
young
think? Do you think
guys.
Doc's a good coach?
Um, I think Doc is a good people manager, and I think that he knows the game, but I think his influence is more holding a locker room together than it is like being like this outstanding strategic coach. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I think he gets a little rigid sometimes. I think his coaching style can be inflexible. And I think sometimes the criticism for him is warranted around not making adjustments. But some of that is what makes him so great in dealing with stars, because he's saying to the stars, and he was, you know, an amazing player himself. He's saying to those guys, we've got a game plan. The game plan's not hard. The game plan should work. If you do what you guys are capable of doing, we'll win these games. And he knows that he has to give them the confidence to go out and play their game, and that he has confidence in them. He's very good at not being divisive with those players, and there's nothing worse than losing an established star veteran, and it happens very easily. And when it happens, you know, how many coaches are casualties of that? Didn't work out. Didn't work out. Didn't work out. Couldn't get along with it. Look at, I mean, Kyrie, dude. Like if Kyrie only signed 1-year deals, their coaches would sign his coaches would sign 1-year deals.
Yeah.
You know, just
And
bang,
that's the
bang, 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 bang.
So to some degree, Doc's the consequence of that Kawhi George 2-year deal, the whole situation they set up there.
100%.
And, you know,
Expectations are now. They didn't meet the expectations. They came up way short. And and this is the other thing, right? This is a difficult time, okay? And there's lots of considerations and explanations, but there's never going to be a good excuse, especially when you think about the owners shelling out as much money as they are, right? And the revenue stream is whack. I mean, I don't know how they know what's going to all come of this, right?
That's what makes the coaching fight. They're going to pay Doc through 2022 to not coach.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what makes some of these coaching decisions puzzling.
But if they send a message to the players, right, and they have these contracts, it's kind of like one of those all or nothing on the table gambles, right? Like, hey, you guys want us to like accept the fact that you want to be in the bubble, but there's no excuses. We played basketball. You got paid a check. And it doesn't matter. I don't care who you are. You know what I mean? I mean, regardless of the social justice, you know, aspects of everything in the bubble, you know, I didn't get to not work my job during COVID. Do you know what I mean? I've been busting a hump every single day. I've been stuck in this 10 by 10 home office, you know, cranking out on my computer, and I got 3 jobs I do, you know, and we definitely had to lay people off, you know, at one of the companies. Like we've all had to, you know, we brought a lot of them back, but, you know, everybody's had to make adjustments and deal with that. And so my thing is the expectations are the expectations, you know, and if you don't meet the expectations, somebody has to be accountable for that. And to your point, the players are never going to be accountable for it because their contract, nobody's going to, you don't just get rid of somebody, right? So if you think about the way the NBA is structured, if somebody has to be accountable to send a message, there's only one guy. Everybody else, I mean, what are you going to do? Fire the trader? And somebody's be like, "Ah, man, we got to try harder next year."
The Celtics did that.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. But I don't think it sent a message.
Hasn't worked. What are we? Yeah. So I was counted out again today. 09, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 18, and now 20. That's like 9 years that the Celtics have lost a key rotation player in the playoffs. It's unfathomable. Now I gotta look at other situations because I'm sure it happens to a lot of teams. But what happened? Game 1 of the playoffs. They're rolling along. They're smoking the 76ers. And then you just see Hayward hobbling and you go, oh, no.
Well, the first thought was, is it the same ankle? Because he's gone.
Yeah. And
but
he was gone anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, yeah, Gary Washburn writes this week.
Do you think it's fair to call him fragile?
Now, my mom said this, and you're a guy from a medical background, too. There might be a little something with the bones there. I mean, like the way you break a hand catching a pass, you break your ankle going. It's just dumb luck, maybe. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. You got to tell me here. He's had some freak injuries. It's unreal. Yeah. Like he just suffered a grade 3 ankle sprain with nerve damage, apparently, just off kind of stepping awkwardly in the lane. It's unfathomable. And again, you can't rip them for that. The contract didn't go the way they thought, and there's been all the adverse effects of that. So what do you kind of just throw your hands up and say, what the heck? They never could have predicted this. He never had these issues in Utah. It just all kind of started with that freak night in Cleveland.
He's a likable player the way Evan Turner was an extremely likable player.
Yeah, come on.
Now, well, no. Here's on the court. Okay, not as a person, right? Evan was exciting, right? Like funny.
No, I mean their production. Evan shot 11% from 3. Gordon had a 40% 3-point shooting this year.
But what I mean is willing to take that, side role facilitate it, pass. There were some things that I thought Evan Turner did a really good job of, and I'm not trying to like compare them like they're on the same level.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there were some similar things about the unselfishness, do whatever's asked of me, and you're right. Evan couldn't shoot a 3-pointer, but he
Well,
did a
my point
lot,
is
but
Hayward
he did a
bounced
lot
back.
in the zone. He did a lot in
Yeah.
that space, you know what I mean? In the mid range.
Yep.
And I feel like that even when Hayward came back and he wasn't even whatever, I think it was really obvious how much he's able to probe that area, and keep it dangerous. Even when he's, I know he missed that layup and everybody was flipping out. There's a lot of reasons to like Gordon Hayward. There's just a lot of reasons not to like his contract based on, his availability. I mean,
And
you
that
look at
happens
the
to
fan
everybody.
base and everybody's just, you know, you can't tell me that this team's better off without Gordon Hayward. That's ridiculous, which is true. They're not better off without
Well,
Gordon Hayward.
it taught me a lesson because when I was growing up, I thought Joe Johnson was the biggest fraud because he was making as much money as anyone in Brooklyn. Or Atlanta too, for that matter. They
Yep.
had the most mediocre teams, and I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? But you start to see when the cap goes up and guys are available, the money just keeps going up, and it doesn't really matter who it is because everyone's going to get paid. And then once you reach that level, the expectations go through the roof. It's been tough because I look at
But he was worth that contract.
he was, yeah. For this year, he was on all-star, production level
Yeah,
going into
right
that broken
before he got
hand.
hurt. Yep.
Yeah, and then he comes back again, rock solid. I thought in the bubble, especially, he was fantastic. And then you get into the postseason, and it happens again. So now you look, there's probably one more year for him to try to
When he's
recover and bounce
healthy,
back.
when he's, conditioned and healthy, he's absolutely worth the money. There's no doubt, especially the way that he's willing to sacrifice for the other guys around him and make those players better when he's out there without getting in their way. There's just no doubt. He has a great impact. He's worth it.
Yeah.
But I don't think, he's going to pick up his player option because he'd be an idiot not to.
So they have
And
one.
there's no way he comes back after that.
So this is it right here, and I stress this because they lose here in the East Finals to the Heat. You have the future, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. That's going to go on and on and on, you hope. But there's always this
And
window of
Marcus, hopefully.
opportunity that goes limitless. But honestly, I look at them, Kemba Walker and his knee issues that may or may not go forward, Hayward and his health going into the next year. Next year's the year. I mean, what the Celtics established themselves as this year in the bubble that made me think that they were going to be a championship contender during those regular season games is they had 4 scorers that no other team could match. You lose one of those in Hayward, the whole thing kind of comes tumbling down. So Marcus Smart jumps into that Hayward spot, and I thought he did an admirable job. Now, is there a conflict a little bit offensively between his shot selection and the others on the team and his ball handling versus who needs the ball on the team? Yeah, but he's filling in that Hayward role, and he's not necessarily Hayward. So there's going to be a downtread to that.
He needs to be the primary ball handler. That's why he worked so well coming off the bench. And he is looking to make more plays. The issue was that the Celtics weren't really making buckets. I mean, the offense looked miserable. And Marcus is more than willing to be the guy to try to go grit out some offense. The problem is sometimes he tries to grit it out from beyond the arc a little bit too much once he gets hot.
Yep.
Like he almost gets a big head. It's like if we could just – well, it's not that he gets a big head. He just gets carried away because he's a passionate guy. And it's like if we could just not take away the passion, just be like, dude, I get it that you hit a bunch of 3-pointers, but you got to mix it up more. You got to attack. But here's the thing. Yeah, I hear you saying the window this year, next year, whatever. I'm kind of like meh on that, to be honest with you. I mean, do I want it? Yeah, I want it. But I said, what was it? I guess we're coming up on at least a year and a half ago, if not 2 years ago, with all that, talk about trying to trade for Anthony Davis, and giving up Tatum. I'm like, nah, I want to play the long game. I mean,
Fair point.
I'm pissed about the way this went down. So don't get me wrong on my level of patience right now because I had a couple of days to cool off.
Yeah.
But I didn't even watch.
This is Justin 3 days later, if you're wondering.
Dude, I did not even watch Game 5. Friday night, I was hanging out with a buddy at my camper, having some
Oh,
drinks,
you
having
gave up.
conversation. Yeah. I was like,
we
well, I
did
knew it was over.
we
Come
did a
on.
whole segment
We knew it
on
was over.
the first quarter of that game when it was really going bad. We sent our text messages through, or no, we showed everybody our text messages from that first quarter, and we weren't too far from you.
I was watching it on Twitter. I like pulled it up a couple of times.
Oh,
Everybody's
it
like,
was
this
bad.
team sucks. And I was like, all right. But then, but you could see it was headed this way, and we could talk about a couple of things around that in general.
Let's
But
start with
I was big. Well, hold on, but I was big on the long game.
Let's start with
So
Brad Stevens then. So
okay,
we talk about Doc, and I find it interesting because you said he can control the room, doesn't necessarily have the game down. Stevens has the game down, but his approach to the team, for right or wrong, I don't think this is necessarily
not
wrong in
old
today's
enough.
league. Is
Not
that
old
it?
enough. Not old enough. Didn't play.
I don't think that's it. I think he looks at the NBA right now and says it's a players' league. They're going to do what they want. They're going to tune you out if you try to change that. So I'm going to appease them. And look at what it did for Marcus Smart. Hate it or love it, I think his approach was smart, made Smart a better player, allowed him to be fearless, allowed him to develop his three. Jaylen Brown comes in, not a great shooter, gets a bunch of attempts to work it out. Now he's the best corner three-point shooter in the league. Now, does it get carried away in certain circumstances? Does the analytics that he
More was
follows?
Smart than Jalen.
Yep.
Jalen just fades in the corner and doesn't. Sometimes he just doesn't get involved enough.
That's the tough thing about this
But
team
it's not.
right now.
But it's not because he overdoes it. I never
Yeah.
feel like Jalen. If anything, my criticism of Marcus is that he overasserts himself and on offense, and my, I had no criticism on him overasserting on defense.
No.
Either of those players, honestly, on offense, Marcus overasserts himself sometimes, and Jalen underasserts himself sometimes. And I don't mean underasserts from a shooting 3-pointer standpoint. I mean just attacking. And when you look at how they were able to kind of like keep climbing back into the series if they got down in a game, or if you look at one of their wins, and I guess it even goes to Toronto, but it really played out in Miami. As soon as Jalen got aggressive and like really tried to attack the rim, it made a big difference. I mean, it made a really big difference in how they were able to
I
get on
love
some
it. Yeah. And
runs.
he's capable of it too, with the ball handling he's developed. And just his overall ability to get to the rim. He's the best driver on the team. And he takes 30 shots in that pivotal, I think it was the game 5 against Toronto. Some people got on him a little bit about that. I think he only hit 11. But I'm like, when this guy's forcing the issue, and I think the stats to back it up, I don't have them on hand. When he's scoring 25 plus, I believe their record's impeccable, if not undefeated.
They're a
And
small team. They're a
yeah.
small team. Bam definitely exploited that. It made it tough on them. And if they don't attack aggressively on offense, it makes it worse.
So somehow, some way, you have to flip Brown into a position where every game he's on the ball, he's a priority for the offense. And I think the rotation being where you want it to be helps shake that out a little bit. The question is this team conducive to staying healthy when it comes to Kemba's knee? Smart, Hayward.
So I'm glad you mentioned Kemba, because I feel like Kemba's in the way a little bit, with what you just said about Brown, especially when Hayward's not in the lineup. When Hayward's in the lineup, that works a little bit more smoothly.
Yep.
But Smart can't be just completely off the ball because he's uninvolved in the offense. So then they've got to kind of get the ball to Kemba. Smart's kind of has to have the ball. And then, so when does Jalen get the ball not in the corner to do the things you just described? Now, imagine this long game I'm talking about when you have Robert Williams, who,
You buying
is,
in? This is
oh,
the
dude,
this
I'm
is
in
the
if he can
summer.
stay healthy.
This is
I'm
the
in.
summer of complicated feelings about Rob.
Nah, I love Rob. I mean, I just the athleticism. He's got
So why
he's
was
got a
Brad so
long way to
hesitant to
go.
play him? I think there's two things there.
I don't know why Brad was so excited to play Tice, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, he finished it out well, and I get that he's there, but dude, everything that made Tice good on offense was his ability to create space for Tatum to weave through the lane. All
Hmm.
those little picks.
And that
That
disappeared.
shit went away game 3 in Toronto. And as soon as it did, and it was so funny because at the beginning of that series, they were like, Oh, look at all, and even against Philly, look at all the little things Tice does to create space and do
I
this
wrote an
and
article
that. And
about that.
yeah, everybody was talking about it. But then, just like you said, it was gone. And man, the minute that was gone, Grant Williams became their best center, at least in the Miami series.
It always depended, though.
Yep.
Some games it'd be Grant. Some games Cantor looked like the answer. Some games Rob looked like the answer. His Toronto spurts in that series were phenomenal. And it looked like, I started saying against Philly, if this guy can turn it up, this changes the team completely
It's just
because
a
it
little
gives them what
slow
they
on
need.
rotations on D. Just, I mean,
The
you know,
Ibaka thing killed them.
yeah. And I think he's so young. He's gonna get so much better. He really is. Like 2 more years, and it's gonna be outstanding. But I'm looking at a time when it's gonna be, Smart's the distributor, so doesn't have to force as much. Jalen gets the ball in his hands a little bit more, so he can do the attacking that you're talking about. Tatum, one thing that was definitely a major upside is Tatum learned how to create for others, like better than he ever has in these last two series, because Toronto and Miami did an awesome job. And don't get me started about the officiating, because I really did not. And it goes back to Game 3 in Toronto.
Yeah.
That's another, like, right around the time Tice disappeared. They started letting the opponent, grab Jason Tatum beyond the arc as soon as he got the ball. They're grabbing, clutching, doing all this. And, he's not getting a call, and he shouldn't be throwing his arms up in the air, and his body language was poor. But they were letting the opponents grab and clutch him, and really just disturb that. But then he finally gets freed up. How many times did he get called for pushing off with his arm?
Yep.
I'm like, well,
That
hold
became
on
a
a
problem.
second. But what? Because maybe it was a little bit extra. Like, we allow this in the league. We just only allow it to a certain subjective level. I mean, dude, that's baloney. That was one of the most frustrating things, the way that they were calling that. I watched Jimmy Butler push off
I will say Tatum
countless
got his free
times.
throws, though.
Yeah.
He did. He had quite a few 10 free throw games in the playoffs. I think the whistle was fair on him. I thought he was phenomenal in the playoffs. Now, I try to push back a little bit against it because I think especially after game 7, they were saying, oh, here's the new savior. Here's the new best player in the league. And I think he still has a few more steps to take to get to that position, which is fair. He's 22. He's going to have the opportunity to get
But he
there.
averaged like a double-double,
The
and
turnovers, though, the
yeah,
turnovers that
yeah.
came with it killed them, especially in these late
But
game
see, that's
situations.
my point about the whole like, they let the opponent be extremely physical with him, but then if you look at the Celtics, they were not getting away with that. They were constantly in foul trouble.
The
They
war on Tice.
Yeah, it wasn't equal, dude. It was not equal. And I don't know if the criticism, if I have any for the Celtics, is that they should have forced the foul trouble issue every game. And I've always said that.
They did it in game 5 against Miami, and then next game, gone
They
again.
didn't. And you've got to make the officials look bad. It's the
Yeah.
only way to win that war. Not with your hands up, not with your mouth. It's keep fouling. Make them foul everybody out. Because then they're really like, well, we can't have I mean, these are the
Let's
stars.
go. Let's go back to Brad. Brad's not a guy who's ever going to press the issue on that.
No,
He's always
and
going
he
to say,
should.
I said that against Toronto too. It's part of, I hate it, but it's part of the game. Nick
It's
Nurse
part
did
of the
it and he
game.
wouldn't. And there was some animosity there between Nick Nurse and Brad Stevens in
Oh
that
yeah.
series. Like they were two different kinds of
Dude, the
coaches who
minute Nick Nurse was in the corner calling for a pass, like
that was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I've never seen any coach do that. You've followed the NBA longer than me. Have you ever seen a coach
no,
do
I've
that?
never seen anything like it.
That's like a
I've
college coach
never
antics right
it,
there.
Dude, you just can't. First off, you can't be on the court, but you really shouldn't be in the corner like that. And like, literally, he gets the pass. It's like, I don't know why you'd ever
That
think he was
series
on
was
your team, but
infuriating. And I
just
like
brutal.
Toronto. I became the Toronto fan on the post game show because I showed them a lot of respect. I said this series is going to go longer than people think, especially when it got to 2-0. But man, were they infuriating. They had
Yeah.
that edge of the champion. They had that coach who was going to do whatever it took. and they made it out of this series by this much.
It took a lot out of the Celtics. By
Yep.
the time the Celtics made it to the Miami series, all that clutching and grabbing and,
It's another
it,
issue with Boston. You didn't have the
yeah,
bench to allow the rest for that.
yeah, yeah. But that's why you got to force the issue. You have to, like, when you realize it's heading that way, you who gives a crap if everybody's got 4 fouls? As a matter of fact, one thing Brad did do, I can't, who had 4 fouls and he didn't pull them?
He did that all the time, so it's tough
Yeah,
to
that's the
think.
one thing
Tice
it was
had
Tice
4, and
there.
then
Yeah,
Kemba in
yeah,
Game 6 as well.
yes, that's right. I knew there was 2. So, I think he did pick Kemba up out of the game, not right away, but not long. But Tice he just left out there.
He got a
Oh,
little
why not?
uncertain, yeah, with the rotations, and I thought that it was so fitting how this team season ended. Tice just gets boom, boom, fifth foul, sixth foul right out of the game. There's 3 minutes left. I think it's tied or they're down 3 at that point, and he's like, "Do I go Grant?" He puts Grant in, gets a little uncertain about it, goes with his best 5. Hayward's hobbled, of course, and then they just get run off the court because they couldn't figure out their center position. Now I'm
Yeah.
higher on Tice than you, but you saw the limitations of Tice against
I've been
Miami.
high on Tice all season,
You saw the
like all
limitations of him, though.
season. But yeah, that's why you got to be a little more on the long game with like a Rob Williams, because he's got the like superior athleticism. I don't know that he's ever going to be like Bam is strong, right? And I don't know that Rob's ever going to be like,
Bam is special.
yeah,
That guy, we talk, you look at Tatum and you say, this guy's a Hall of Famer. I see that with Bam, too. He is,
yeah, he
whew,
had a lot more polish to his game than I expected.
he can run the offense like Al Horford did. And this guy's like Al Horford started doing that,
And
what,
he's what,
9, 10 years into
23?
his career? Yeah. This guy's
Bame's
like,
23.
this
Yeah.
guy's been playing for 2 years with Miami, and that's what killed Tyson this too. Against Toronto, he just had a sprint back and catch them in transition, but now he's trying to guard Bam and follow the passes. Like it discombobulated Boston. But I don't think any center could have won that matchup. Like even
What did
Embiid.
Boston shoot from 3? Do you know, in that series?
They shot so many that it diluted it.
That's what I mean. I didn't feel like it was really that great. I felt like, yeah, the spacing was an issue.
Yeah, when Tice was out there in particular, because his 3-point shooting fell apart. But how do you feel about Brad?
You mean
Everybody's
like,
gonna.
should he get fired?
We can start there. No, but do we both agree on no?
No, I don't think Brad's
All right.
going
So what's the next
anywhere. They
step?
just signed him.
Yeah.
I think he should stick around. I think that in large in part, the team is young, and they're not going to get some calls, and they still have a lot to learn. So I just don't see where. I think he's got rope, man. I think he's got rope, and I think he's got the respect of the players. I think that's the biggest thing. Do I think he deserves some heat? No, not yet. Not major heat. I mean, everybody's up for criticism, but does he deserve major heat? No, no, because he's already taken underperforming teams and brought them up.
Yeah.
He's taken a
That's my
super
point.
young team with a cancer and, didn't get him to the Eastern Conference Finals that year, but, Eastern Conference Finals, young club, lots of turnover. Before we even started recording, you and I almost did the podcast before we even hit record.
Yeah.
But the thing we were going to say was,
The
well, what were the
greatest sin in
expectations for
podcasting.
this team? Yeah, the greatest sin. What was the expectations for this team at the beginning of the year? And once Kyrie was gone and everything else, I mean, they were like, well, middle of the pack team, da 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 da. They almost went to the finals. I mean, in large in part, they exceeded expectations from the beginning of the season. They may not have exceeded the expectations that we had for them in the bubble, or at the point where the season was shut down where we thought we were at. But let's be honest, when they shut down the season, it was the best thing that could have happened to this team, because they
were
were
so injured.
faltering. Yes. So I think they exceeded expectations. I don't think you can kill Brad. I think you're going to want to see year over year incremental improvement, and that incremental improvement has to come from the players that are here year after year, not from roster turnover, changes, trades.
Didn't think we'd say this, but it echoed some of what we saw in 2019, and that he's going to do the best with the team you give him, but you got to give him the right team. And
Yeah.
I think this is where you pull Ainge in, who hasn't gotten talked about enough this week. I give him some leeway because the team he drafted last year, as we know, the draft comes before free agency, so he probably doesn't know they're getting Kemba. Definitely doesn't know how good the team was going to be. So you basically had two halves of the team, a half that was ready to contend once Kemba comes along, and then these draft picks that, I like Grant Williams, but Romeo Langford, Carson Edwards, even my guy Tremont Waters,
Hmm.
they didn't. They weren't ready to
They're
contribute to
fun
this team.
guys, but yeah, they're fun guys, but they're
The
100%.
underbelly of this team was so young, so raw, so far away from helping them. Even a Semi Ojeleye couldn't do much. Brad Wanamaker was about the only bench guy that they could get to chip in a little bit, and even he was teetering on edge most of the
Hmm.
time. So Brad did the best with that situation. Wanamaker led the bubble in plus minus for those 8 games, so he made the best of this. It's just the underbelly of the team needed some help. Maybe you look back to last draft. Maybe you look back to the trade deadline, but I think Ainge probably didn't do the best job he could have with maximizing this roster this year.
I just
So
don't know how much money he has to play with. That's the
yeah,
other thing. He's going to have to spend picks off for players, and those players come with salaries, and there's a salary cap, and he had to extend Jaylen Brown. Good job, he did. But now
great
they're going to
move.
have to pay Tatum, and they're still paying Hayward, and they just signed Walker. Like, they don't have a lot of money to work with here, and so I think that Ainge was. I think we exceeded Ainge's expectations this year, just as much as we exceeded, the expectations the fan base had and the national media had at the beginning of the year. I think there's definitely an angle here where Ainge is trying to, you know, get some of these rookies and figure out who could pay off by year 4 of that contract, right? And really help them out. But I'm not sure that he thought he was building a championship club for this season as much as, he was going to get the locker room culture fixed. He was going to solidify guys like Brown, who probably wouldn't stuck around if Kyrie did. I mean, that could have gotten really messy. He resigns, the guys who are 100% going to build this team into the future, and he's got what, 3 more picks this year, so they'll be able to like play around with all of that. And like, Grant's got a spot on this team the next 4 years.
Good
you know
pick. Good pick.
should he be a starting center? Should he be the guy you're relying on instead of Tice? No, of course not. But he's only got so much money to play with, and so I wonder how much he's. I mean, think about it. They won a championship, and Big Baby was a solid, and Leon Poe were solid minute contributors off the bench.
Sometimes you get lucky with those second round picks, which they certainly did there. I mean,
Well,
Davis
but
was
they
a
had the
throw into,
talent.
yeah.
They had Posey and they had
And I
House.
think this
Those
team
are the
has the
vets.
talent.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's my point with this team. I felt good about them when they were fully healthy and they had everybody in their place in
You know what they
terms
didn't
of
have?
what?
They didn't have a Kendrick Perkins. And when the Celtics got rid of Perkins for Green,
Perkins
they
is
were
available.
they were soft in the middle. Yeah. Yes, he is. He's gonna stay that way.
Everybody wants a center. You know what? I'll concede it a little bit after seeing that Miami series. They need some help in there, but you're right. Rob, they're leaning on Robin in the future. Do you feel great about that? I don't know. I think the talent's there. I just don't know if the room for improvement is there in him. Although he did get better this year, minimally, I'd say.
All he has to do is figure out how to play good position defense, because he can alter shots. It's a reaction time. It's the speed of the game.
Yep.
The bigger concern has always been, can he stay healthy? But
That's a big one. I mean, he missed 50 games in a row this year, right?
yeah,
Something like that with the
yeah,
hip. That was
he's
brutal.
gonna have to be able to stay healthy. And if he can do that on offense, he can create a lot of easy buckets. He could get he worked the pick and roll a lot.
Yep. He
Maybe not
scored.
always smooth, but
He
but
would come in and score like 10 points in 5 minutes too at his best. Like it was remarkable.
and they don't lose anything once he gets his rotations down. They're not going to lose anything with that positionless defense of theirs because he's so long and he's quick enough that he can really close out on those better shooters. He's just got to get that half step faster because he anticipates. He doesn't have any real anticipation right now. All of his blocks are recovery blocks. He
Yep.
got beat. He got beat, and he found a way to use his athleticism not to get yanked off the floor.
All right, Justin Poulin, Dome Theory, you're the guest. I'm going to let you swing this in two directions right here. Do you want to talk about the finals, or do you want to look back on the season, share some of your favorite memories? You pick.
Oh, you want me to talk about Rondo winning 2 championships, one with the Celtics and one with the Lakers? Let's do
No, no, no.
finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do finals. No, I'm just saying if he wins, what was that tweet? If the Lakers win the finals, he'll be the first player in history to win the finals with the Celtics
So
and win with the Lakers.
Nick talked to me about this. Nick Gelso. Coaches have done it. Players have not. So Rondo would be the first player to do it.
Nah. What? All right, let's do the finals. Let's do the finals.
I think the Heat can win. I've been
What?
trying to convince myself of this of the last couple of days.
No, they want to all go home.
The Heat?
Sweep. No, sweep. The Heat gets swept by the Lakers.
Wow. All right. So let me do my best here. They have a good zone. It's not a great zone. It's a good zone. They have the right personnel in there. I don't think the fundamentals are sound, which made it all the more frustrating that the Celtics couldn't figure it out. But the pieces in there, long wings, being able to hide those different shooters in there a little bit, and then Bam in the center, blowing up pick and rolls against it. Their defense is legit. And then they can throw in man situations Crowder, Iguodala, and Jimmy Butler at LeBron. They have the right personnel defensively to make it tough on LA. And Bam, man, you've seen some of the struggles Davis has had when it got a little physical out there. Bam's going to make it tough on Davis. This isn't a sweep at the very least.
I think it's a sweep.
Just a LeBron and Davis thing? Because
it's a great excuse for everybody to go home.
All right.
It's going to be low ratings, dude. It's going to be a very
really.
I think
well,
it's
the whole
really
thing's been low ratings.
And it's going to bottom out right now. Like the league seemed to want Miami. Like if you're.
All right, is this
saying.
just a Celtics thing? Would the ratings have been high for the Celtics?
I think that I think the ratings would have been higher for Celtics Lakers. I do, but I feel like the Miami underdog thing. So you never know. Right, the Miami getting to Toronto last year and Miami this year would be a pretty incredible story when you consider that Kawhi went from east to west and all of that. So it would be a great story for Miami to win. There's no doubt. How favored are the Lakers? I mean, I know they've got to be favored. How favored are they?
They're 4.5 in game one, and I think it's like 350, 285 on the odds. So they're not heavy. Huge favorites, but they're hefty favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not surprised because I would definitely. Part of the reason I have them as a sweep candidate is because of what you just said. Like there are a lot of soft spots in that Miami defense when they bring their shooters out, and the players that are going to have to take on Davis and LeBron are not going to be able to make the big plays, but LA still has other good defenders, right? Like Rondo's going to be able to play some solid defense on any of those shooters. And they also have guys that will make some plays away from LeBron and away from Anthony Davis that I feel like even if Miami throws everything at those two guys and makes it tough, I just think it's going to leave everything else wide open because Tyler Hero, you know what I mean? Like Duncan, those guys are going to be. I just don't. I think that
I
the
look
Celtics
at the Lakers
screwed up not attacking those players more.
It's tough against his. People talk about a zone like it's so easy to solve. And one thing the zone can do is minimize the weaknesses of those two guys specifically and help them contribute to the offense. And they need some offensive help. They're going to need to get out in transition. Their half-court offense isn't great, as we saw against the Celtics. So they have some things they're going to have to overcome, namely playing 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA. They don't have close to that top end talent on their side, but I think they have coaching. I think they have scheme. I think they have depth, and I think they have some good wing defenders to throw out there and a great center to go against Davis.
Yeah, and I like Spoelstra. I mean, I definitely you got to take your hat off to that guy. I mean, he's an institution. And he's kind of under the radar, right? Isn't it weird how under the radar he is?
Well, they had some shaky years the last few years after LeBron left. And part of that was Chris Bosh having to retire. They traded Dwayne Wade. They kind of broke the thing up. They signed some dumb contracts, Hassan Whiteside, Dion Waiters.
I was going to say Dion
James
Waiters.
Johnson. Yep. So they kind of pulled this out of their butt to some degree with some of the trades they made. And then, of course, getting you run into Tyler Hero, Bam in the mid-round, Duncan in unrestricted or undrafted free agency. They ran into some gold all at the same time, which is pretty remarkable. I think a tribute to their organization. I'm not wearing the Heat culture hat, but there's a little of that there. So I think they'll put up a fight. You're probably right. The Lakers probably win this. They have LeBron. They have the team.
It's almost always the team with the best players.
Yeah.
And there's an argument to be made, and you made it already. You said Bam was right there with Jason and probably was the better player in this series, right?
Yeah.
So, you called that there, but usually the team with the best, top 2 or 3 players, wins the series. And it's an appreciable difference. You make a good point. Bam's defense on Davis, we'll have to see how that plays out because if Davis isn't effective,
Davis needs to play center here.
That's going to be a problem.
Yeah. This is me being biased a little bit here. I looked at this Lakers team coming in this year and said, I hate
Dwight Howard, dude.
I don't see it.
I hate Dwight Howard.
KCP. Rondo's impressed me, frankly. Mm-hmm. But everybody else there, I look at their cast of role players, Kyle Kuzma, I'm just like, they don't have enough. But those 2 players, LeBron, Davis, kept getting it done over and over again. So they're probably going to prove me wrong one last time.
Yeah. By the way, maybe we end on this one. Doesn't Rondo look like he aged overnight? Like he went from perennially looking like the young, like he didn't look like he was ever going to age, right? Like he was just this young baby face. And I don't know if it's the dew, but like literally overnight, it's like he's got wrinkles and he looks like the oldest man. It's like he was using some miracle, like face cream, and then because of COVID, they stopped supplying it.
All right, that's one theory.
We went from a grape to a raisin overnight.
I heard people talking, they couldn't get their skincare routines down. I could definitely see Rondo being a skincare guy. The Amazon orders were backed up. I'll also say this guy's been to so many different cities now. It's unreal. Like, how many times has this guy had to move? They used to have that Photoshop of Shaq in the rainbow of jerseys. That became Rondo by the end of his career. For
real. Which is weird because it seemed like he was going to be the player the Celtics were going to rely on in the post-KG Paul Pierce era.
Yeah, some of us thought that, and we were so wrong.
Yeah, that ended fast. That ended faster than the Antoine Walker era under Ainge.
That brings me back. This is a perfect spot to end. Thank you, Jay Crowder. That's all the reason you need to root for the Heat. And not every Celtics fan will feel that way, but I feel that way. I'd love to see Jay Crowder, Kelly Olynyk holding on to the trophy.
Ugh.
Not Justin.
Not every Celtics fan.
Justin Poulin, Celtics Stuff Live every week with John Duke. Say hi to John for me. Love that guy. Thank you guys for everything you've done over the last couple of years, helping me out here and teaching me the ways and just supporting me too. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, man. You've been there for us, and thanks for having me on to close out the season. Really appreciate it, and we'll do it anytime. And who knows when we start this baby back up again? So, would be happy to kick it all off when the season gets underway.